welcome to our podcast, Uxbridge Beat. My name is Jennifer Nebu-Campsell.
And my name is Scott Campsell, and we are very excited to introduce you to today's guest, our Uxbridge Mayor, Dave Barton.
A small disclaimer that this interview was conducted back in January of 2022, and as such, some of the pandemic restriction references are now a few weeks behind us. Thank God. But bear with us, we talk about a whole lot more than just the pandemic.
We absolutely do, and we were so happy to be welcomed into Dave's office to chat with him and his canine companion, Guinness.
This is a big thrill, because last time you and I talked, we were on the radio.
Yes.
I think. And so thank you very much for doing this with us.
This is not just anybody.
No.
This is the mayor. This is Mayor Dave Barton. I took a picture of your sign with your car.
Oh, wow.
When I came in, and it says reserved for mayor.
Yes.
Can I please get a sticky note before I leave? Because I'd like to put Dave underneath it.
Yeah,
just to be clear.
We need something
reserved
specific.
for mayor.
Because it could be
Dave.
any mayor. You could have the mayor of Stouffville over here, and they would think, oh,
Yeah, like there's no like Ian can't park in my spot. That would be
no,
inappropriate.
that's right.
Yeah. Again, there's almost no perks if I jump. It's the only one, I think.
You got a parking
That
spot.
I get a parking spot. And really, during the pandemic, I've hardly used it.
I think they changed it from the handicap spot too, didn't they, to be yours?
I don't think so. But everyone's I limp a little bit, and I am getting old. Like, I don't know, I've had a couple hip replacements, I'm pretty old now.
So we talk a lot about your mayoral life and sort of the today and everything. And Scott and you have a history growing up in the same town and going to the same high school and everything. I don't have that history with you, and probably a lot of the listeners don't have that kind of history with you. So just rewind us a little bit. Tell us about your pre-mayoral life.
Okay, so the Bartons go back a long way in town. My parents met at the high school. Both my grandparents farmed land in Uxbridge Township. Born at the Uxbridge Cottage Hospital here in town. We grew up in Glen Acres.
Where's that, Glen Acres?
Glen Acres at like Jonathan Street, Young Street.
But that's technically called Glen Acres?
Yeah, that's Glen Acres. Again, you're new.
see,
You've only been here a decade.
Well, yeah.
So
Since I was 11.
Do people still call it Glen Acres?
I've literally never heard that.
Now it's more
Jonathan's.
Quaker Village East, I guess.
Was it what they call it? I thought Quaker Village was only part of that development, though. No.
I don't know.
I'm
Next to
more
the
about
car wash.
Next to the car wash,
Yeah,
or by Main Milk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Main Milk, yeah.
So my parents built a really nice house, almost completely on their own, and it had a pool. The first Hickman pool was by parents, and because we're all related. And then when I was 7, my mother wanted to do something different. She was trained as a nurse, but that meant night shifts and didn't work with family. And she wanted a job where she could kind of always be home, but always be working. So they bought the Eudora General Store.
Oh, yeah, I knew that, yeah.
So from 7 to 20-ish, we lived in the Eudora General Store. And
Actually in the store?
So we lived behind and above it.
Oh.
And I grew up knowing kind of everyone in Eudora in a neat little town. Most of my high school years, when I really knew Scott, 1 grade was between us.
You talk about that best year ever.
That was the best year.
When Dave didn't actually go to school with you.
That was the year that we all talk about, the year at high school where we all... Remember when Dave wasn't here?
Yeah.
That was,
It totally makes sense. Would have been grade 9 for you. Right?
yeah. So where everybody was sort of worried about being initiated back then, and I'm new at high school, we were all like, but Dave's not here. So it's not.
So it's all good.
It's not, yeah.
It totally makes sense. I'm glad I gave you 1 good year.
So then after high school, what'd you do after that?
After high school, went to school, got a job. I worked for a company called Omron, and I ended up kind of pivoting into being a relay guy. And a relay, you know when you walk into a room and the lights click on, you hear the click?
Mm-hmm.
That was my claim to fame. I was the guy who sold...
The clickers?
The thing that would switch small power signals to big.
Okay.
I was the clicker guy. So I worked with them mostly doing like relays and some automation, and then got hired by a company called Tyco, which is a huge multinational. And I was handling Canada for them early on for this very special product relays. And then it was one of these American companies that said, well, if Dave can do Canada, he can also do the Northeast. And then it was, if Dave can do Canada and the Northeast, he should really handle North Carolina. So by the end of it, I had like half of North America.
A little bit of power.
Well, no, it wasn't power. It was too much travel. So, again, really enjoyed my career. But they were going to go from 2 guys managing all of North America to 1. And I put my hand up and said, it shouldn't be me. Because at the time, my wife is an ER physician, so we had a small child. And it didn't work for me to travel any more than I was already traveling. I was already gone 2 or 3 weeks a month. It just didn't work. So I kind of semi-retired at 40 or so and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I wanted to make sure I gave back. Again, we'd always kind of underspent, so I had lots of flexibility from an income perspective. And decided, let me start volunteering in town. So I got on the Trails Committee and the Energy Conservation Committee. Found that my voice wasn't strong enough just as a committee member. Unfortunately, Pat McHugh, she passed away. And I thought, I wonder what it's like to run a campaign. Threw my name in the hat very late, kind of on the last hour. Decided to throw together a website and some material and start knocking on doors. And worked really hard and got elected. And I've loved it ever since.
You touched on your wife being an ER physician, so your wife is Sonia. How did you meet her?
When I had my on-run sales job, I was only handling the GTA. And as a sales guy with a fairly small territory, it gave me tons of flexibility. So I was running most mornings with a group of girls, which was great.
I bet.
Well, again, so trying to run 10K every morning, I was mountain biking a ton. So it was a great lifestyle gig. And one of the girls I ran with was an ER physician from Markham named Barb. And Barb had met us both and thought we should be together.
Oh, there was a yenta in the situation.
So Barb was pushing us together. And we went downhill skiing a few times together, Sonia and I and Barb. And I'm always a little bit extreme with things like that. So instead of skiing with these 2 girls that I thought I was probably better than, from a skiing perspective, because I skied a lot as a kid, I thought these girls will ski and I'll snowboard. And
I know where this is going.
and I'm also trying to impress this girl. So I snowboarded in high school once. And twisted my knee bad enough that I almost missed our Cuba wrestling trip because I tweaked it bad enough that I could hardly walk. Mr. Walters almost killed me.
I bet, yeah.
I'd never seen him mad until I'm like, Mr. Walters, I tried snowboarding for the first time and he's like, we're going to Cuba in 3 days. Anyway, so my knee was better in time to get beat up in Cuba. And I snowboarded with these 2 physicians. And I think on the first run, they took me down a blue first. And I fell probably 50 times the first run. Maybe 25 times the second. And then 20 times every run after. But I survived, and she wanted to hang out with me again. So we did this over and over again. And then the funny part of the story is Barb decided, after witnessing me fall a bunch of times snowboarding, she would try it with some other friends. And she tried snowboarding and fell and broke her right wrist and her left arm.
No, and she's an ER
and
doc.
she's an ER doc. So she couldn't play with us anymore. And finally, Sonia had to spend time with me alone. And that's when I finally won her over. And the rest is history.
So some woman had to break limbs for you to hang out with your wife.
I am not an easy person to find a match. It was a small price to pay, really. And we could talk to Barb now. I know it was probably 2 months of suffering, but we've created a really lovely child. Together we're a decent team.
It was worth the hit. It was and I'm sure she thinks of that when there's that clicking noise in her elbow where she's going.
Indira's such a nice kid.
Yeah.
Indira's such a nice kid. I know it's gonna rain. My shoulder hurts.
Yeah.
Indira's such a nice kid.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 2 hip replacements?
Yeah.
So why is that?
I just did I ran a lot for a while too. Ran a few halves and a full and an ultra. And I water skied a lot as a kid and wrestling and mountain biking. I don't know. It's kind of like that song.
Wear and tear, right?
It could have been the whiskey, might have been the gin. I'm not sure what happened. I was 40-ish years old and got 2 hip replacements.
Did you do them consecutively, one right after the other?
The first one was kind of funny. My dad and I had hip replacements on the same day with the same doctor, which is pretty unique. Our physician had never done that before, the surgeon.
How does that set up though? Okay, I have Tuesday free. Dad, does that work for you? And I'm like, well, yes.
So what happened was it actually revolved a little around my election. I was in pretty nasty pain. You know, if I dropped $5 on the ground without something to lean on, I might not bother trying to pick it up because I couldn't.
Guinness, fetch! Fetch!
I know.
He had a lot of friends who I hope Dave draws some money because there's no way he can grab it in time.
I was hurting fairly badly. I was struggling. I was coaching mountain biking but couldn't get on and off the bike.
Oh.
So I was struggling a bit. And I said to the surgeon, I'm like, I have to be fit enough to knock on every door in Uxbridge in the summer. How quickly can you get me in? And he's like, normally there's a 3-month wait. But he ended up with an extra surgical date on the 21st of December. And nobody wants that date because they're going to be a mess for Christmas. So all the people with February dates that he would normally say, I can get you in 6 weeks early, nobody would take this new date. So he's like, I can't get rid of it. Do you want it?
Yeah.
And I said, yes. And then I told my father, who also wanted to travel in the spring.
This is the best word of mouth story ever.
So-
It was like, hey, there's dates. Dad, you want to look at hip replacement?
It's kind of like we hear about like COVID shots. Hey, so you have 4 openings in Santa. So it's a little bit like that, but it was hip surgery. And it went really well.
You got any aftermath where you go, wow, that from the hip surgery or
It's
full range of motion?
So full range of motion. I mountain bike. I slalom ski still. I got up on one out of the water on a slalom ski.
Good for
with
you.
new hips, which is
That's not easy.
it's not easy.
It's not easy with not new hips.
Can do pretty much everything. I might have to do it again when I'm 70, which is unfortunate.
How's your dad? Is he in the same situation?
He's a little older than me, so he's way better than before he got hip surgery, but not.
But the recovery wasn't the same, just because of age.
He's lived 70 plus years the
Right.
way I've lived mine, so he's just everything kind of breaks down.
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second and mention to everybody that your absolutely gorgeous dog Guinness is here with us recording.
Yes.
And he's been talking a little bit. So if they hear anything, I just want people to know that it's him and it's not me or Scott.
No, my favorite part was when he started yawning. That was like, I've heard this story so many times.
Sorry, Guinness.
Sorry, puppy.
So did you do any like class president in high school or anything like that, or SAC or?
I ran once with Rafi Lazinski, and I don't. What were you running for? Like social committee or something, and I think we lost. So I ran once. I never thought that this was a career path for me. I never said, I really wish I could be mayor.
So it was just a pivot from your previous career, and you thought, how do I give back? What do I do? And now I'm looking at the possibility of mayor. Here I am.
Well, let's go counselor first. So
Okay.
when I went for counselor, it was, this could be something where I could give back in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone is speaking for our demographic. Kind of the 40 to 50-year-old with young kids, people that are using our trail systems, that are really active in our community. We weren't really represented, those young families on our council.
I agree.
So a little older, especially at the time.
Mhm.
So I wanted to make sure that our voice was heard, and I really thought, if not me, in my situation, who else could do this? Who could live in Uxbridge and make $27,000 a year, I think is what a councillor makes.
Wow, you're just rolling in it, eh?
How
Like,
how difficult was that on council then? So you're representing the demographic that you mentioned. How hard was that for you on council with the other members that were not represented by that demographic? Like, did you conflict at all? Were there any memories that you have where you had issues because of your age?
So I don't know if it was because of my age or just they believe different things. For the most part, we agreed on most things until it got into activities, taking advantage of who we are as the trail capital of Canada, trying to encourage tourism. There wasn't a lot of buy-in from some people on council on those things. Cycling and having paved shoulders and things like that weren't important to many of those people, where certainly the people that I represent, those things are important. And I didn't see the same kind of creativity that we have with this council, finding really unique ways to get things done. There wasn't that same sort of drive.
You weren't exactly young when you were council. I think of Jacob Mantle.
No,
Right?
no, nothing like that.
But did you find that there were times where the older people were looking at you and going, "Oh, you're just a young kid"?
I was respected right away, even though I'm brand new to politics. I think I'd been to one council meeting before. I'm not a political junkie. I don't dream about being an MP one day. I didn't really follow it. For me, I thought, hey, I'm a citizen with a unique background who can give back in this way and represent my community. And I will bring a business approach to almost every decision on how can we do the most with the tax dollars that we bring in. That was always kind of the lens I looked at. When we get $1,000 in tax revenue from someone, how can I multiply that 4 times and make it do something really special? And that's what I always tried to do. So it's not that I was pushed away from our old council at all. I had to make a decision. We'll go to the end of the term. Gary Lynn had moved up to regional chair and was about to retire. Pat Malloy, who I really like and respect, but we had a lot of differences of opinion. He was occupying this office.
Yeah.
He'd become kind of interim mayor, and he and I disagreed on some kind of key issues and had different visions for the town. So I had to decide at that point, do I want to run for council and run into this barrier over and over again? So should I step out or should I step up and try and take the mayor's seat? So I decided I didn't want to step out. I had way more, I really loved it. I loved serving the community, but I didn't want to fight for 4 years.
Right.
So I thought, why don't I see if I can step up? And again, I worked really hard and got some friends to help and knocked on as many doors as I could.
So then the pandemic hits. And nobody expects the pandemic.
Well, can we take one step back?
Yeah.
Okay, so the biggest project that we've
I figured, here we go. Let's go to the culvert.
well, again, just because
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
it's consumed so.
Yeah.
I've been in this office thinking, holy crap, how are we going to get this next step done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, in some ways, it's been a bigger obstacle than the pandemic. believe it or
Really?
not. Because the pandemic, there's lots of people in the same situation. The culvert, we were on our own.
Yeah.
So I win the election, never dreamed I would have the kind of support I had. I actually laughed when I read the results because it was way higher percentage than I ever would have thought.
Really? You didn't think?
Sonia and I, on the last day, knocked on doors until 6 p.m. because we would look at a place with Dave Barton from Air Signs who hadn't voted yet. It's like,
Get her done.
get her done. Like, how are we going to get these people to actually vote? Great that they say they support me, but how do we get them to actually fill out the ballot? So we were really nervous. We worked until the last minute until we thought, well, they don't have time to vote after this. There's no point knocking on their door.
Right.
So when the results came in at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night or whatever, I was very surprised. I didn't think I would have that kind of support. Again, loved every minute of it, maybe except for some of the culvert meetings. But anyway, so again, we get sworn in and we have this project. We've done all the engineering. We've issued the contracts. They've started working. And then now we're on hold because the critical piece of property that we need to put the culvert on, we don't own, and the owner of the property won't allow us to work on it. So we're completely stuck. We've got this, I think the contract price was $12.5 million, and we can't do any of it. Well, we can't do the most critical piece because we can't enter the land.
Now, was that the south side of Broad Street or the north side?
That was the north side. So that's the
north,
Max.
the Circle
Max,
K.
sorry,
Yeah.
Circle K.
Yeah.
That property was owned by a property owner.
Who dug his heels in and said, nope.
Certainly from a staff perspective, they thought they had it locked up. And then he strung them along long enough that they issued the contracts and then we couldn't move.
Oh.
So we had to quickly make decisions. Do we cancel this project? We have $7.5 million of funding from all other levels of government to help us get it done. It's critical because we've been told by engineers that it's gonna fail soon. So we're in a really tough spot.
Yeah.
And I'm one vote on council. So we have to convince the new council, many of which were brand new to politics, to get to know each other and then say, now we have this project. This is our current state. How do we move forward from this place? And the only option we had was to buy the land. That was the only option the property owner would give us. We could have expropriated, but the delay in expropriation, that's when a government can just take your, can just pay for your property and work through it.
Yeah.
But if that property owner digs in their heels, it could take kind of 12 months to get it done, and our money expires during the time, and the delays would kill us. So we as a council got together, decided what the top of that price range would be. I took the property owner, just him and I, to the Second Wedge, and we had a tough meeting.
I bet.
Where we talked about it. We went through all kind of the options, and I told him where we were at and what we had to do. And then we had a follow-up meeting with lawyers, and we inked a deal.
you obviously don't need to name names or anything like that, but I know that there are a lot of property owners on that downtown strip who are not locals.
So,
Is he a local?
so this guy does not live in Oxford.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was someone who I never met until we met for that drink.
Right, and so with that in mind, he's also not vested into the longevity of Uxbridge as a town.
Yeah,
He wants his property, he wants his money.
Yeah, this is for him. He bought it as a long-term investment,
Right.
and then now all of a sudden, the big mean municipality want to rip it all to pieces,
Right.
and affect his business in a negative
Yeah.
way. And again, if I was in his shoes, I don't know how I would have acted.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, we needed that property. We had tons of money on the line, and we had to fix this culvert. So,
Yeah.
so that was the biggest thing that the new council and I had to navigate
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get that project going. And then every step of the way, that culvert project, we've got a river running under an old downtown with soil that isn't virgin, that moves the way you wouldn't expect it. Like lots of complexities.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds quicksand, isn't it? Basically, like
It certainly, things have settled where we didn't expect, and we have large companies doing this work, and sort of everything that could go wrong went wrong, including a global pandemic in the middle of construction.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's done.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Blood pressure's a little lower now.
So we got through that project. It is finally complete. The downtown, when it rains a lot and we're expecting a big forecast, my director of public works can sleep through the night again.
Yeah.
Because certainly there were some concerns. If we get a lot of water, there's jack posts holding up this culvert.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the projections from a climate change perspective say that we're going to get wetter, wilder weather. We've seen that all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we've been spared. But now that we don't have a giant bottleneck in the middle of town from a water perspective.
Was
So-
this the thing? Okay, so you got elected. It seemed, for me anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but when you got elected, all of a sudden now here comes the culvert project. Am I chronologically right on that? Like you got elected, now we go for the culvert. Like
So you mean as councillor as well?
yeah.
Yeah, so when I got elected, the design was done.
Okay.
So,
There was already a process in place.
yeah.
So it wasn't like here I am and let's do the culvert. No, it was already a process in
It was
place
already- it was already
that
going
you
with
jumped in the process.
Oh, yeah. When I was first elected, they were most of the way down the road
Right.
doing the culvert,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of waiting for the last minutes, including, the $7.5 million of funding from other levels of government was already in place.
Mhm.
So this project was happening. It was just when it was happening by the time I was.
So this isn't, how do I put it? This wasn't your legacy. This was you ended up taking it over.
Right.
Kind of thing. Okay.
Right. And there was a lot of talk of should it have been a river or should it have been a culvert and all that. All those decisions were made before I was in.
Yeah.
And I've decided early on not to second guess decisions of others. So if they decided that the roofs on the buildings are green, I'm not changing the color of the roofs on the
Right,
roofs.
right.
Like it's like,
They had their own perspective and their own wisdom.
right.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, we've inherited this, so every decision past this, then the new council and I brainstorm and decide which route to go.
Right.
But we're not going backwards,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's lots of decisions that they've made that I can never change, and that's okay too. From a political standpoint, it's not easy. Often there's two roads that both look rosy, and other times it's like, if I go left, I'm gonna get hit by a tree, and if I go right, I'm gonna get hit by a truck.
Huh.
I'm not sure which is better.
That's a good quote.
Yeah.
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 And so we've dealt with that a lot.
So now a pandemic hits.
Now
and
a pandemic hits.
I'm going to hazard a bet that there aren't many elected officials who have an ER doc for a partner. And your perspective is going to be certainly much different than somebody else's perspective whose partner is in another line of work.
Right.
So you are being hit from both sides, from the political side in that you have to be responsible for your town, and you're getting firsthand knowledge of what's happening in the hospital from your wife.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that stress. How did that affect you guys personally? How did that affect your family? How did it affect your daughter?
Okay. I think that situation gave me a more crystal clear lens than anyone else in my position.
Yeah.
Because my connection with the healthcare system was way deeper than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a trusted entity to the hospital people and the doctors and hospital admin. So again, I had a better understanding of all that. Now, there was stress heavy stress in both jobs.
Yeah.
So, where most ER physicians could probably lean on their spouse to pick up more duties and to, handle the other things at home, and most mayors might have someone who is also not stressed at home, and we were both pretty maxed out. So for our kid, luckily she's incredibly resilient and responsible, and she didn't need us to help her, to motivate her to get on online school. But she was sitting around either driving with me during some pretty tough phone calls with MPs, MPPs, hospital admin. We're driving and she's hearing some pretty tough conversation. Just imagine this. When we first entered this, when we were in March, if we had a virus that was as deadly as COVID was early days, when we had 20 deaths really early, mostly in our long-term care centers, but as contagious as Omicron, we all know 50 people that have had COVID recently.
Yeah.
So our town everywhere
would have been decimated.
We would have had no hospital capacity. There's beds waiting for a field hospital at the arena. And then we talked about, where are we going to put the bodies?
Yeah.
These conversations happened sitting around my dining table on Zoom. There was some tough days. And then at the same time, you get all the things I get sucked into that get tough, but you get hey, my garbage wasn't picked up today. And it's and again, those are real issues and people are experiencing them. But at the same time, I'm dude, I know this is a problem, but we're wondering
if your body needs to go into cold storage next week.
There were some tough meetings we had, and there were some tough days in my job.
Yeah.
The thing that I never dreamed I would have had, the kind of support I've had from guys like John Henry, who's our regional chair, Peter Bethlenfalvey. The guy's been working 7 days a week, probably 20 hours a day since March of 2020. And I know there's been differences of opinions for business owners like yourselves. I know how hard it's been for you guys too. But if I send him a text and it's urgent, my phone rings. And probably the busiest guy in the province, maybe minus the premier. So the support I've received from the region and from the province has been phenomenal. One-on-one conversations with the Minister of Health and
do you see where that? Did you see that goes somewhere when you had set up a town hall meeting virtually for business owners to meet with Peter and voice their concerns? And so at one point, I can't remember what stage or what color we were in, but it was something along the lines that we were allowed, I think it was red control. We were allowed 10 people in our studio. So our studio is 3,000 square feet. Body Fit is gigantic, as far as a gym.
Yeah.
And so they had come across and said, okay, you're allowed to have 10 people in your gym.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, even now, if I were getting Body Fit, nobody's even close to each other. Everybody's wiping stuff down. Andy had a little abacus set up inside the change rooms where it was if there's 10 people, you can see the balls going over, and you know that you're not supposed to go in the change room. And we had
But you go to Anytime Fitness, and the place is the size of a Tic Tac.
Yeah.
But you're allowed the same rules.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what I can say is, you think of where I was in March of 2020, when the decisions we're making from a town perspective on how we survive this emergency, and the garbage guy didn't come today, right?
No.
But I just want to. What I witnessed from a provincial standpoint was them bringing in this huge amount of information. You got groups of people that are scared, angry. Then you have business owners that are all trying to survive. And I'm watching them take in all this information and then try and make rules that are fair. And at times, the province were way too liberal. They just allowed way too much virus to move, I thought. And other times, I thought they were way too conservative. In the end, they were making some tough decisions. And I think their hit rate on decisions were decent considering how many things had to move and how quickly they had to make calls. Some of them, the times when, Tin restaurant could have the same number of people as Boston Pizza, it didn't make sense. And I saw them change those rules over time to capacity, but it was never fast enough for the business owners.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The money never flowed fast enough for the business owners. They always lost the odd guy, a close friend of mine runs events.
Yeah.
And there were times when he was the most desperate.
You can say Adam's name. Say Adam's name.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my really close friend is Adam. He runs mountain bike events and car events. And his business was devastated probably more than any other because his sales went from,
Yeah.
$1 million
we talked.
to zero.
Yeah, we talked.
a million to 20,000.
Which might as well be zero.
And at times Adam wasn't looked after, and then at other times, in the end, they treated him really, really fairly, maybe more fairly than he thought he would be treated. At times, gyms were treated really badly. Maybe they always were. It all gets really complicated.
Well, we gave up. And actually, the town hall meeting was sort of the impetus to it, because I suggested that to Peter, and I said, this is something that you guys should need to look at. And his
He said that's a
comment
good
was
idea.
that those are some good suggestions. And then nothing changed for the longest time. And I remember Scott Rutledge came up with some stuff, and that seemed to be Peter's thing. That seems to be good suggestions. And so it got to a point where we're messaging him, we're messaging the premier, and I know I had parents that they were emailing and sending letters, and everybody just felt like we weren't getting listened to. And talk to you, that's a different story. Like message you and you're like we're on the phone, but at the same time, and that's where it was that. And when the mayor of Ottawa went from orange to now you're locked down, and the mayor of Ottawa is going, hey, this isn't right, you can't do this anymore, and he didn't get anywhere. And so I if the mayor of Ottawa is not getting anywhere, then some little martial arts school owner in Uxbridge isn't going to get anywhere either. And so did you find that? Did you find that you're banging your head against the wall a little bit?
So yes and no. So again, I know they were always listening. They just weren't always acting as quickly as we wanted them to. So I think through the pandemic they learned. We would all want them to change rules and hey, listen, I'm at 50% capacity, you have to change. I'm at 10 instead of 50% capacity. You got to change the rules tomorrow, and they didn't. Right? They just couldn't because they were moving way too many things. There's been a lot of noise right now. There's about the equal amount of noise that I'm getting from people that think the last thing the kids should be doing is going to school, with the same amount of noise saying the kids need to go to school.
Right.
And I've seen that kind of both sides of that the whole way through.
But what can you do about it?
I'm an input.
Okay.
So a guy like Peter has 50 different inputs. I'm one of them. Just like me. If I have a farming question, I call five or 10 people. And those 10 people give me the lens. They give me a whole bunch of information, and I decide out of those 10 people on which route I should go. So if it's right or left, we get 6 or 7 people saying go right. I take all that in, and my opinion then is to go right. So for a guy like Peter, he probably has 50 people telling him things. And I think out of those 50, if the consensus is go this way and he trusts the input, he'll go that way. Again, it's never fast enough because you're moving 14 million people. Yeah. I can hardly move 22,000.
So how do you move past that? So you got half people saying kids should go back to school. You got another half saying kids should stay at it. How do you give him input?
So how do you separate your own personal opinion from it?
So on that, I haven't given input.
Okay.
So I've got a meeting tomorrow. It's the small urban GTHA mayors. And we've got some items on the agenda, probably partially to give the province advice. And I think on kids going back to school and not going back to school, it's a wash. I'm not relaying that opinion. If Peter calls me tomorrow and says, what do you think? I'll say I'm hearing both sides. I'd really like my kid to go to school, but I'm getting equal people saying the other.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of the approach I would take to give Peter would be, hey, you guys listen to your experts because
we're split. We're split 50% here.
We're pretty split.
Yeah.
And I don't jump back and forth. If I'm giving our MPP advice, I'm very firm on where I believe. I don't use my megaphone. I'm not flippant, and I don't throw our MP or our MPPs under the bus. I just don't. They have a whole bunch of different inputs. They have way more people that they have to deal with. When I have advice for either one of those people, or the premier, who also will return my text on most days, it is typically a quiet, gentle, I think you should do this, or good move with this. I don't yell and scream. I don't embarrass. It's been my approach to this job, and I think it's working. Because if I write a letter to whoever, to the Toronto Star and sign it Mayor Dave, asking the province to do something, that would be because they didn't listen to my 10 texts or letters to them ahead of time or phone calls. So I try and do things where it's one-on-one with them so they can hear my opinion.
And respectful rather than stamping your foot and going, hey, right?
Again, the same thing. If people think the best way to get my attention is to write a letter to the cosmos, it's not.
Hey, Amanda. Your kids have grown so much.
Hi, Katie. Yeah, they're bigger now. Yours too. They seem to be doing well.
Honestly, the lockdowns and isolation have been really rough on us, but I got them into karate at Okami Kai, and it has made such a positive difference for them.
Really? Our family needs something so badly right now. They need to be moving and motivated.
Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness, striving to bring out the best in the community since 1999.
Look them up. The teachers are great, and the program is welcoming for all ages.
Okami Kai Martial Arts and Fitness.
So let's move on to something a little bit more lighthearted. Let's talk about the social media mayor.
Oh, sure.
So Scott and I have a voice. So Scott and I have a voice where it's like, it's raining. Dave, can you stop the rain? Because we watch the Facebook groups or we watch the letters to the editor, and somehow you are supposed to be in charge of all things inconvenient.
Yes. Obviously, everything is my fault.
So one of the biggest eye openers for me, you and I were walking together for a portion of the MS walk about 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, but it was the last one before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And you and I were chatting about that, and you had just done a ride along with the Ajax mayor.
Yep.
And the Ajax mayor actually had a press secretary sitting with them doing all of their Facebook releases and their Twitter releases and all that sort of stuff that Ajax mayor doesn't do their own social media, but you do. And so you get called out on a regular basis, and what kills me is when you get called out for not actually responding to be called out in a timely fashion. Thank you very much. Like, it's been 10 minutes. Mayor Dave Barton, and I watch you, Scott, and I just howl. We watch you get tagged in this stuff. And so there was, oh gosh, what was that? Maybe 2 months ago, there was a power outage because there was a problem with the station. The entire town went out. And so everybody, did blah, 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 blah. So my post was, yes, there's a power outage. No, Dave can't fix it. And just get on with your life. Go drink some wine, light some candles, snuggle the one you love. And this became a big joke with us, and you got on the bandwagon with that. And we loved it. We had a great time that night. So talk to us a little bit about how that works for you, how it doesn't.
So probably the only reason I'm in this office is because I'm active on social media.
Yeah.
I have been since day one.
Mm-hmm.
I campaigned on it. I'm trying to be incredibly responsive. So being tagged on something, what I love about social media, how about we say this? What I love about social media is when I reply once, 100 people see it. And I also love that when someone is completely unreasonable, they typically get corrected by someone else.
My favorite one was that guy who didn't even live in town, and he was calling you out on wearing a mask on your bike or something.
Oh my God.
And he was from Bowmanville.
He's from Bowmanville?
Yeah. And somebody on the thread called him out because they went and looked at his profile, and they're like, dude.
That wasn't a mask on the bike. That was the Adam Sandler thing.
Oh, that's right. It was the Adam Sandler thing. It was the Happy Hanukkah, the Adam Sandler post. And he's like, this is what our mayor thinks is appropriate.
Yeah.
I missed that whole thing.
You did?
Yeah, no,
it was brilliant.
Yeah, so you posted the Adam Sandler Hanukkah song.
Okay.
This guy goes and says, this is what
the local mayor.
This is what the local mayor considers to be appropriate to post. So a bunch of people all went on his page and all said, this guy's not even from Uxbridge. He's from Belleville or something.
And they started, it got a little mean. They're like, dude, get out, stop living in your mother's basement and stuff like that. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It was
pretty I don't see any of it.
They
because
stuck
it got
up
taken
for
down
you.
because I ended up going on. Why? What did the mayor of Belleville post? Because
Belleville, wherever it was, yeah.
Because this is where the guy was from, and so it ended up getting taken down. I don't know if it was a moderator that did it or he ended up deleting his own comment, but that's probably why you didn't see it.
But you had a whole troop coming to your rescue with that. That was awesome.
I also don't take myself too seriously. I try and have some fun with the gig.
But there's got to be nights where you're pissed. Like there's got to be nights where somebody goes and does something like that.
Just grinds your gears.
Like, granted, I think, and we've talked about this before, I think you do it to yourself. I think where you okay, the guy's garbage didn't get picked up. Well, you're going to run out and go pick up his garbage. You do this kind of stuff that mayors just don't do.
Uxbridge is a pretty small town. I have tons of energy. I don't sleep a ton. If I can make someone's life a little bit better by doing a job that will take me 5 minutes, then I will. If I can brighten someone's day with 5 minutes of my life when my family's sleeping, I'll do that. I sleep, 5 hours a night. And if I can make someone's life easier or sit and watch Netflix, I'll do that. I'd rather go pick up someone's garbage than return an email from some guy in Belleville. And sometimes, I'll give you an example. I got a nasty email early in the pandemic about a long-term care center, and there was gloves and masks being blown up against a fence. And whoever it was wanted me to go and complain to the management of the long-term care center, who I know were maxed out completely, about this issue that they should be cleaning up the property. And honestly, all I did, I went out, I threw on a pair of gloves, got a garbage bag with my mountain bike headlamp. But in honestly less than 5 minutes, I threw it all in a garbage bag and threw it in my garbage dump.
That's philanthropy at its best, right? Like, just if there's a problem, just go take care of it. I take our dog Milo up to the dog park, and I don't know why people are disabled from actually taking their dog poop to the container after they wrap it, but they're very disabled. I'm not sure why. Yeah. But every time I'm there, I'm picking up other people's dog poop that they've left in the bags we're gonna remember it. But it just go help. And I think that's awesome. Like, good for you.
But somebody complained about it. So meanwhile, you did it. You went and you grabbed it. Meanwhile, somebody had the ability to complain about that, sent you the email. When meanwhile, how long would it have taken to type that email? You said it took 5 minutes to go and grab. Look, they could have done that too.
But they think it's always somebody else's problem, right? It's always somebody else's responsibility.
But there was a lot of fear at that time too, right? There was, if I pick up a mask, I'm going to get COVID.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So.
This is at the disinfecting grocery stage.
That's where it was. And again, I had a different lens that I saw from a pandemic perspective.
Yes.
And I had a different risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that the masks and gloves had been blown around for a week. And again, if I wore gloves when I picked it up, which I didn't really want to pick up masks and gloves without, I threw on a pair of gloves and I threw it all in a bag and we were done. And then I
promptly dropped your gloves and let them go up against the fence.
Of course. Yeah. But again, it was, I'm very careful, just like I am not throwing our MPP under the bus. I also am very concerned when I know the staff at a long-term care center who are losing patients to COVID. I can understand what they're going through a little bit. And the last thing anyone needs is an email from the mayor saying, can you send someone out to pick up your masks and gloves?
No.
So
that's the final straw.
So I'm never going to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell my staff to do it. Then we have all of the issues with them cleaning up someone else's property and how does that work?
So this is like the pure definition of politics. Like, you're not going to throw an MPP under the bus. Why? Well, because you might need that MPP later. Yeah, or you're not going to send a letter to long-term care. Why? Well, because you might need them later.
But also, I would suggest, because you're actually a really kind person.
It's also knowing what they're going through. I don't want to bug them with something that's going to distract them from the critical decisions that they're making today. If I can spend 5 times as long solving the issue than it would take to bitch about it, I'll solve the issue. It's just my lens. I think that's how you would do it. That's what my parents would do, and most people. And I honestly, with that thing, I sent them an email saying, I just went and cleaned it up, and I told the person who complained. Mm-hmm. And I spent more time with them telling me I'm an idiot for doing it, I think, than anything else. It was,
oh my gosh.
And so
you couldn't do right regardless of how you...
So those things drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of stuff, when I'm trying to do the right thing and I get criticized for doing the right thing, if there's any stress in my job, it's, I sent you 3 planes and a helicopter.
Yeah.
I've
does nothing. Yeah.
I've done my job.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you want.
Yeah.
But again, I have the best job in the world. Because everything I do, 20 years from now, it's all going to still be there. You think of the pump track, which was really early days, right?
Yeah.
We supported the pump track. It was just before I got elected, the first time that this idea came out. It was driven by Steve Snodden. He got a whole bunch of people to support it, from Rotary and Optimist and everyone else. We got the funding through the province. Uxbridge put our money in, and we built something that everybody loves.
Okay, so best job in the world. You running again?
I'll do another term.
Yeah.
If I get elected.
Yeah,
we'll,
of course.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I think I need to be here at least another term. We need to build a hospital. That's going to be the biggest project that we do by far. We're going to need a ton of community support, like a huge amount of money from our portion. We need to build a new Reachview, another 192-bed long-term care center there. I'm not done yet. So we have some things that have to get complete before I step out of the office. And I think only one more term, because I might want to do other things in my life. I never thought I would be a mayor, but I think if I only did one term, there'd be a lot of unfinished projects.
Okay, so let's say you don't get elected. What would your plans be? Like, do you have any where you go, okay, I'm not mayor now. What do I do?
He's going to be a male stripper.
Don't think I'd be a male stripper. I think I'd do more property stuff. I might get a real job. I don't know.
Get a real job, because this is not a real
It's
job.
not a real job.
So maybe I'd get a real job of some sort. Maybe I'd start a business. Again, I'm very fortunate that I have a ton of flexibility.
That's great. Tell us what you want your Uxbridge constituents to know in terms of process. There was a post on Facebook that you had put in, and I think it was about the potential apartment development going in by the high school there.
Yeah.
And you had talked about the fact that comments on Facebook don't count, right?
Okay.
And so here's the process. So tell us about how do we, Joe Schmo who live in Uxbridge, and we think that this particular item on the agenda is important. How do we make a difference other than being keyboard warriors on Facebook?
So being a keyboard warrior on Facebook, the only person who will read it, and I won't even read them all, will be me.
Yeah.
So it's one of the many inputs, but it's only me who sees it, and it's never official. So for anything to do with planning, and that is anything like new subdivision, new developments, you need to make sure that those comments are in writing and they go through the regular channels.
Is there a way that I can come to the town hall and just put things into official writing form on a Tuesday, let's say?
Oh, you can do it on any day.
Okay.
So if it's a planning application,
Okay.
you'll read the application on our website and it'll say email this.
Okay.
Send comments to dlarue@uxbridge.ca or clerks@uxbridge.ca. It depends on what it is. But there are times when the correspondence has to be very official because it's a legal process or a planning process. The other thing that you can do, if you say that every sidewalk should be green because of this, and this.
To match the roofs that you talked
To
about
match
earlier.
the roofs. Again, very important things. You could always do a delegation to council. And that will be, most times it's 10 minutes. But at the beginning of a council meeting or a committee meeting, you can come in and say, green sidewalks are the way because.
Okay.
And you can come in with 3 of your friends, but you go and you sell your ideas to council.
So you have council meetings weekly?
We have council
That's
meetings.
correct, right?
We have 4 a month. If there's a 5th week, we typically get it off.
Okay. So I'm a community member. Right now, all of your meetings are on Zoom, right?
Yep.
Okay. But in normal situation, they're here and they're publicly accessed. If I'm a public member coming into a committee meeting, do I count? Am I just an observer?
Oh, if you're in a typical meeting and you're sitting in the back, we always want to hear from you.
Okay.
And I think we might be the only council that does this. So if you want to do a delegation, you get 10 minutes to talk to us about whatever it is. And we'll ask questions, and depending on what your presentation's like, you can totally change the world.
Okay.
Especially if you're an individual that we wouldn't normally hear from. Like, we don't hear from 14-year-olds very often. So a 14-year-old with a really cool idea,
Take it to council.
take it to council.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a path to getting it done. If it's something that won't cost us a fortune.
So give us an example.
I went to a Rotary meeting on the Moccasin Project or something like that. And basically, it's a ready-made program to acknowledge Indigenous history in different communities. And part of it is putting up a plaque and a sign with a moccasin on it. And you could put it at the skate park or the pump track to acknowledge that area was once, maintained by our Indigenous peoples. And it's a unique project like that. In the end, it's going to cost us, if we do it, it'll cost us between $1,000 and $5,000. if we're a $14 million budget, we can typically figure that out. And again, it's something where there's no real downside. It's something where we can fit it into existing budgets, and the First Nations community already support it. Those types of things are pretty easy, and we haven't had someone come and talk to us about it yet, but that type of thing we can do. If you say, I want you to build an outdoor gym, it's going to cost you $1 million, and you need to build it by June, we just can't do it.
And we'd like you personally to do it by hand.
So
made with love by
made
Mayor
with love.
Dave.
Yeah. So just always understand that there are limitations on what we can do. We don't have a ton of money. We're a very small municipality, and our tax dollars are very precious. And we, in terms of this council, we are strong believers in sustainability. What I loved about the pump track, as an example, is we put $75,000 in. It is something that will last at least 20. It's not like the splash pad, it doesn't need water. It's just a hard surface that kids have a blast on. We don't monitor it. It's an open space, like a regular park, that has brought a lot of joy with no long-term costs. Love those things.
And now making an income with charging for parking.
And making an income from all the people that are using it from outside of town.
Yes.
And what I love about that paid parking piece is that, again, it's free for anyone who lives here. And from anyone who doesn't, not only do they pay, which is $70 a year or $6 a day or something, so it's fairly nominal, but it'll kick them an ad when we're done that will say, you should really get ice cream at Kawartha Dairy, you should really go to Wixon's Bridge for dinner, like that kind of piece, which will make it
Keep
so...
giving us your money. Yeah, you're out of town, but here's what you can spend your money on. No, I like that.
I got hammered a lot by saying we want people to come to Uxbridge and empty their wallets.
I remember that.
I remember that, yeah.
Again, I believe it. It
Yeah.
was maybe the wrong term. But when someone comes in town from Bowmanville or wherever, and they come here because of some really cool asset we have, we don't want them to come and only use our stuff. We want them to spend the day and go to Blue Heron and go to Tin Mill and Urban and make a day of it. And seriously, we want you to spend some money while you're here so that our residents, our taxpayers have a net benefit.
What was the reason for the flack over that comment?
Because people took it out of context. And one issue with local media sometimes is that their job is to sell ad revenue, and people love controversy. People love it when there's...
But do you see the controversy in that, or do you think, no, it was blown out of proportion, this is stupid, I don't understand why I got problems with this?
So I know I chose the word incorrectly. You speak for 4 hours, and that was a great quote to pick up.
Yeah.
But in the end, it was completely out of context. If you listen to me now, I say, and I fully believe it, if we have someone who comes in from out of town, I want them to spend money when they're here. I could say I want them to spend money while they're here. I can say I want them to empty their wallets.
One is a little bit more visceral than the other.
One is.
Yes.
And part of being in my shoes, I should be more careful with my words, because that caused a whole bunch of people a bunch of grief. And people will not fully understand my lens because you read one thing in the paper and you remember it.
Yeah.
So if I don't get elected one day, that might have been 500 votes there because of one dumb comment.
So coming out of the pandemic, the culvert is completed, yes?
Your culvert is completed.
Culvert is completed.
Yep.
Now we're looking at the downtown town square revitalization project.
Right.
Where are we at?
All right, so we're almost done. So the final plan is about to be given to council. Now let's talk a little bit. There's been lots of letters to the editor on town square versus town rectangle.
Okay.
So there has been some demand to have, and this is just my opinion, and I probably shouldn't speak before a report comes out, but I will. There's been some people that want to see us tear down the Circle K and the old Coffee Time and leave that as open park space with no development there. It's been a lot of that. What we ran on, part of the reason we did the culvert the way we did, was to make sure that we could develop the downtown and get accessible housing, businesses in that area. So if you look at the plans, the culvert is about 100 feet wide, and we can't build on top of the culvert north of Brock because it wasn't built for it. So I see that as a pedestrian-only street with patios on it and lots of open space with a couple of really unique areas, lots of bars, restaurants, all those types of things that draw people in, with condos / apartments / maybe offices up top. Because my goal has always been to get more people to live and work in downtown Uxbridge, because when you live in downtown Uxbridge and you need to find a financial planner, you're going to walk across the street to Brian Evans. If you need to buy a coffee, you're going to walk over to Tin or to the bridge. When you need to buy a book, you're going to go
as opposed to making it a commuter town where we drive everywhere.
Right.
Right.
And things are going to change in the next 10, 15 years from a vehicle perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think some automation is going to change the way we move. But in the meantime, we need some people living in downtown Uxbridge. And people like our parents are going to need a place to live that is accessible without grass, where they're still connected to Uxbridge. So that's my thought. And downtown housing is important. I love parks, obviously, and by the end of this thing, you'll see some other really unique things that we're doing from that perspective. But we have Centennial Park right behind my office here that almost nobody uses.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need an exact, in my opinion, we don't need an exact duplicate on the other side of Brock.
Yeah.
Let's drive more people to this one, and let's get people living downtown.
Yeah.
So I just believe in a town rectangle. You're 100 feet right down along the culvert, instead of a big town square with no one living or working in it.
No.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think that's neat.
Cool.
So we're going to move on to rapid fire.
Okay.
Unless you have anything else that... No? Okay, rapid fire.
Now, just before we do that, just so you know, I don't know how well I'm doing. It's my very first podcast. No one's ever done this to me before.
Well, this is our...
We already talked about doing a part 2 of them, so I guess...
We're going to do part 2, because I'm sure we're going to have to follow up on stuff.
If this is what it
You're
took,
doing great.
this is what it took. I had to set up audio equipment just to have a conversation with you. I'm just saying, we could actually talk without recording it at some point.
And
It would be okay just to be friends.
Again, we could do that too.
Okay, rapid fire. Winter or summer?
Winter.
Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Beatles.
Favorite color?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe blue. I like water.
This one might be a little bit sketchy. What's your favorite restaurant in town?
Oh, I'm not going to answer that. That's yeah. No. I go.
Okay, so then can you answer, like, out of the restaurants, what would be favorite meals where you recommend? Let's say somebody comes into town, best hamburger.
Oh, so this is really sad. This is one of the things we lost during COVID. And no, it's not rapid fire anymore.
That's okay.
I loved the smokehouse. So I went on a bit of we'll call it a health kick, but I was eating smokehouse salads like a couple times a day. I did my best to keep them open. But my last meal was, I think I was their last customer, which is really sad.
Oh.
And Deer and I went there for dinner, and I had gotten off my no carbs whatever thing, and
that's just.
I had maybe the best cheeseburger and fries of my life, sitting there with my lovely kid at the smokehouse, and I think I was the last customer because they closed the door when I left, just before Christmas. Very sad. Anyway, let's go back to the rapid fire.
I don't know. I'm a little sad now. Who's your biggest political influence?
Oh, I'm not a political guy. So
I know.
I honestly, I don't have one. Honestly, I don't. I have lots of people I listen to, but from an influence standpoint, it's my buddies that I'll have a beer with or go for a hike with, who tell me turn right, turn left. I don't look up and say, hey, I really want to be like anyone.
What's your biggest fear?
Oh, I don't know.
Because you seem pretty fearless. You're doing all the extreme sports and everything like that. So obviously adrenaline's pretty high on your list.
So for me, it's all about preparation. Yeah. Again, it's not a rapid fire now again, but to me, I believe in the appropriate amount of insurance and whether that is to make things sustainable or not. So again, I don't insure against broken windshield. I insure against losing my house. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing while I'm here is well financed so that when I leave, the next mayor doesn't say, oh, we can't afford this, so let's get rid of the trails. So when we get into things like paid parking, it's so that it's not a line item that can be cut because it's self-sufficient. Keep going, sorry.
No, that's
to be honest, we call it rapid fire, but it's just because it's rapid fire for us.
Okay.
So far,
we like it when it digs in.
Yeah.
Okay, so I believe in sustainability in every way. If I'm going to build a pump park, I want to make sure that it's financed well enough that nobody in the future says we're gonna have to get rid of this because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is build something that only lasts 4 years that someone else cuts because it can't go on because no one has the money.
What is your proudest mayoral moment?
The coolest day. Let's just set this up. So it was fall of 2019, I guess. Yeah, fall of 2019. We had Peter in town because we went to take root, and we went to that Harry Potter thing that was called the Wizards Festival in Albany Park, and we went a few different places. And I said to Peter, and we had Willie with us. I said, Peter, you gotta check out this pump track. We just got it built. You gotta come and see it. And Peter, Willie, and I showed up, and there was full. Kids were everywhere. It had just recently opened, and we got surrounded by kids on all sides. And they're like, hey, it's Mayor Dave, it's Mayor Dave. I'm like, guys, this wasn't me. The guy who really financed it is this guy. And Peter and I someone handed us both helmets and bikes, and we both did a looper on the pump track.
Oh,
That's
cool.
awesome.
And it was so much fun.
Cool.
And it's probably not in my best interest to, beat the finance minister on the pump track, but I don't think he knew I know how to ride a bike. So again, Peter's way better at me than math, but I did beat him in the pump.
What's your proudest dad moment?
I'm trying. Oh, you know what? This one's funny. Okay, we're at the cottage where we all water ski a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we were trying to get a kid up skiing, and it went bad. They held on the rope too long, they drank a whole bunch of water. Like, it was bad.
We did that to our kid. We did that to ours.
So he still blames us to this day.
still
You should have told
blames
us to let go of the rope.
So it went bad, the kid got angry, there was crying and upset, and my kid, who was really young at the time, might have been 6, said, I'll go next. And I'm like,
Cool.
there we go.
Yeah.
There's a kid who's not afraid to try cool things. It's those types of things. Again, I spent 2 hours. I don't get a ton of time, but tonight we mountain biked for 2 hours, and she kicked my ass.
Nice.
So my next purchase is going to be I have to buy an e-bike if I want to keep up to her next year. So anyway, there's that.
If you could talk to anybody who's still alive today, who would it be?
You know what? I think it might be Barack Obama. I've read his book. Or I listened to his book while I went mountain biking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to it too.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a guy who never really wanted to be in politics, who really went to the extreme. And I'm not Democrat or Republican, but it's a guy who really did some very cool things. So it might be Barack Obama. If you ask me tomorrow, it might be someone else.
Anybody that has passed away now, who would it be?
John McCain is a guy who served his country every day of his life. A little bit like me, I'm not liberal, I'm not conservative. He's a guy who was in the middle of his party, who found compromise, served his country more than anyone you can imagine, was a prisoner of war, who has at many times made the ultimate sacrifice, and even in his last days, instead of sitting at home in his comfortable place in Arizona, flew across the country to make a critical vote. Yeah, there's a guy who I think has some lessons to teach me.
Okay, so actually now you just made me think of another question. So
Okay.
let's say I'm sitting down with, I don't know, another mayor from another town, or maybe even Uxbridge years from now, because I'm going to outlive you. And I say to them,
I'm not sure if that's a promise or a threat.
And I say to them, I go, you could talk to anybody who's passed away, or anybody okay, let's say you are still alive. Anybody who's alive, who would it be? And they say, Mayor Dave Barton. What would you want? Why do you think they should talk to you? What would be a thing where you'd say, I did this really well?
You know what? It might be I listened to the people really well. I listened to the citizens. I got a pretty good grasp of what our community wanted, and did my best within the laws of the land to fulfill what they were asking for.
If there is a God, and he or she does exist, and you've passed away, what would you think they would, or he or she would say to you? What would you like them to say?
Oh, I think you'd like them to say, thank you, good and faithful servant. I'm as imperfect as most people. I get angry, I get mad, I do the wrong thing, again, far, far, far from perfect, but I try. I try to You know what? I try to smile while I do tough things. I don't know. These are tough questions. I'm not used to this.
No, big long interview. But the one thing that you said was, I'm doing this, but you would do the same thing. And there's so many things that you've said where I'm going, you're on a whole new level. Like you're at a higher caliber than I am for sure. I don't think I would email you and tell you about gloves and masks being up against a fence. I wouldn't bother you about that. But I wouldn't automatically think, well, I should go grab my gloves and go and take those off the fence.
I think there's a level of kindness and empathy that you bring to the position of mayor and to your constituents and obviously to your family and to your friends that is pretty unparalleled. And I think that's very much appreciated.
Yeah, I'm really thankful that you did this with us because I have a huge amount of respect for you. So thank you.
Thanks. The reason I have the best job in the world is because of the people. It's because Scott decorates his storefront and makes a real difference in our downtown. We have guys like John McCutcheon who have done more for the trails than anyone else.
Who is slated? I'm trying to get him on our podcast. Yeah.
John
Isn't he a dynamo?
Oh my, he's awesome. And many people wouldn't know this, but John has been a huge supporter of me early on.
I know. Yeah.
He's
going to be 90 this month.
The guy is so giving, and
I know,
but he's also such a driver. So Sonia, my wife, is pretty hardcore from a type A perspective. So is John, and they had a couple disagreements early in the campaign. When John's like, Sonia, you need to get Dave more money. You need to do this, 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 and this. I'm just running around knocking on doors, and Sonia's like, if you think Dave needs more money, go find it. And John talked to a bunch of his friends and financed most of my campaign.
Wow.
And what's great, it allowed me to say, I had developers hand me checks and say, Dave, here's the money for your campaign. And I was like, thanks, but I can't take it. So I turned down a ton of money from my campaign standpoint because I don't want to owe anyone any favors unless they are completely aligned with me. Yes. So like a guy like John who gives me money, it's, Dave, can you make sure you have sustainable trails and look after our community? That kind of money I can manage. A guy who says, I want to build 500 units instead of 400, I don't want to owe you that favor. That's too expensive.
Yeah.
Luckily, the ball has bounced very well for me through my life. I don't have to owe anyone anything. And it has made my job so much easier to walk into this and not owe people any favors.
Well, we appreciate it so much. And I did see the weather report for this weekend that it's going to be very, very cold. I would very much appreciate it if you could do something about that.
So again, I will work on that. Saturday looks tough.
Dave, it's cold.
It's going to be on Facebook.
I'm going to put it on Facebook. Dave.
It's too cold.
It's too cold. My dog's not happy.
Again,
totally your fault.
I completely understand. Jen, Scotty, I know this has been a tough couple of years for both of you. Your businesses have been majorly impacted in this. Thanks for trying to smile through it. I know it's been tough. We've had some tough conversations. And I get it. I'm doing everything I can for you. It's really hard. This COVID sucks.
So you're going to start doing karate and fitness classes when this is all...
And singing lessons.
Yeah, and singing lessons. Yeah.
No.
Okay, if nothing else, send your wife back to singing lessons?
Well, I have very little control over that. But I will keep riding my bike and I'll keep on trying to water ski in the summer. I don't know.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
That was fun.
That was fun. And I think out of all of the people that we've been able to interview, this was the one that I really wanted to interview the most when we came up with this idea. But now we are officially Uxbridge's podcast. We are authentic.
We have the mayor, and we're going to look forward to Mayor Part 2, Part 3, the whole series.
Yeah, as long as we can keep on doing this with him, as long as he's up for it.
That was great. Thanks, Dave, for joining us. If you're listening, and to all of our fabulous listeners who are new, if you haven't gone back and listened to the other episodes in our library, please do. There are lots more to come. Who else do we have on deck?
I don't know. Maybe we should do an interview with just Guinness. because he seemed to be really interested in the whole thing.
In the microphone. At one point, he was very interested in the microphone.
Yeah, I think there was a yawn. It was a big yawn. So this is how we're going to increase our download rate. Go back, listen to it. There's a part where you can hear it as an editor. Wonderful dog, beautiful dog. Just I wish he wasn't so close to the mic at times. But there's a point where Dave's talking and you can just faintly hear a little yawn. And so yeah, go. Increase our downloads. Go listen again.
It's going to be the Where's Waldo moment. If they can hear the moment where the dog yawns, let us know what the time is.
Yeah, there might be a brief moment where you hear a beer crack open too, but okay.
That didn't happen. And if it did, it was Second Wedge beer.
It's a Second Wedge beer. Speaking of which, Second Wedge is coming up next, right?
They are next on our lineup. And Lisa Hutchinson from The Passionate Cook as well. And Melissa Pateris.
That's right. We've got beer, wine, and cheese, and Melissa.
Laundry.
Yeah, laundry. Okay. There you go.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening. This has been a Capsule Broadcasting production, because the best way to hear Mayor DB is on a CBP.